Throughout the entirety of football season, when we welcome you to a Friday live right here on the early line all across the SportsGrid network, and that includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination to consume everything all across the grid, we often say, welcome to a football Friday, live right here on the early line. Donnie, if you will allow me, as we are 2 days away from Selection Sunday, when the 2024 men's NCAA tournament bracket is unveiled, I think we call today Conference Championship Friday, live right here on the early line. We are into the semifinals in high major conference tournaments all around the country, including in the Big East, the ACC, the Pac-12, and the Big 12. And we're on to quarterfinal Friday in the Big 10 and the SEC. By the next time we speak, the field of 68 for the 2024 NCAA tournament will be released. So once again, Donnie, with your permission, I think we call today Conference Championship Friday, live right here on the early line.
I love it. And you see me wearing the Carolina blue today for my plus 160 ticket. That looks good because my entire handicap on the Big East tournament, Ben, was this. I don't think Duke can beat North Carolina. That might be their only competition. Carolina looks good yesterday. Duke doesn't even make it to play Carolina, so I'm feeling good there. But the thing I loved about yesterday the most, the phone was blowing up all afternoon, whether it was Ben Simmons or Kevin Walsh going like, we need to expand the tournament. What a day it's been, and that's the way we get after it on a Friday. Expand the tournament, more games, more fun, more gambling, and let's win some money, Ben. How's that feel? Now,
I don't know if you just said what you meant to say or even heard what you said. You said Kevin Walsh and Ben Simmons were hitting up your phone. Former LSU star Ben Simmons wants the tournament to be expanded.
Yeah, if we would have expanded the tournament when Ben Simmons was at LSU, they would have actually made the tournament there. So there you go. Oh, look, Freudian slip actually worked out in my favor. How about that?
Right. Maybe them, Kevin, and the entirety of the radio audience who is now here on this Friday on the early line on SportsGrid, Sirius XM Channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the fold as well. Before we get into Conference Championship Friday, I guess the next few minutes are a football Friday, live right here on the early line. Plenty of trades and transactions yesterday afternoon around the National Football League, with the league year officially underway as of Wednesday. Late last night, Keenan Allen, who has spent the entirety of his career in the National Football League with the Chargers organization, traded from L.A. to Chicago in exchange for a fourth-round pick. Whoever the QB of the Windy City ends up being, they got a steady veteran presence in Keenan Allen, who I think Justin Herbert is going to miss a ton in 2024.
This is great here, right? You take a look at Justin Fields, who they traded up to get as their franchise guy. Did absolutely nothing for him at the skill positions. Now it looks like he's on his way out, and they are beefing up. Because if you take DJ Moore and Keenan Allen as a 1-2 start here, and let's just say you get your quarterback number 1 overall and still have a top 10 pick behind it and get another wide receiver with adding DeAndre Swift, it's almost not even fair. It's like, what did I do to deserve this? As Fields leaves out of town, saying to himself, but I love what the Bears are doing. We knew they had draft capital. We knew they had money coming into the offseason. I love this stuff. For a fourth-round draft pick to get a solid wide receiver that you'll probably just re-up him over the next couple years and even lower his salary cap number, I love what the Bears are doing, Ben. I do.
Injuries were a concern for Keenan Allen early in his career out of Cal. He spent all 11 seasons with this Chargers franchise, but even last year, Donnie, 108 grabs, 150 targets, more than 1,200 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns in year number 11. The guy still has some juice, whether it is Caleb Williams, 99.99% it is Caleb as Chicago's starting quarterback, or Justin Fields. You got yourself a primary target and weapon in Chicago. I wonder what the Chargers are doing first year under Jim Harbaugh. Both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen now no longer Chargers after having been there together for the better portion of the last 7 years. Quarterback trade yesterday as well between Washington and Seattle. The Commanders sending Sam Howell and a couple of other picks to the Seahawks. In exchange, the Commanders will get a 3rd rounder and a 6th rounder as well. Geno Smith signed, retained. Sam Howell now in the Pacific Northwest as well.
Yeah, good backup option there for Seattle. Don't have any issues with this. And also, if you're looking at it from a Commander's perspective, they basically retooled their entire team and are setting the stage for drafting their franchise guy, already getting a backup quarterback in Marcus Mariota. So should be a fun season here for the Commanders. And at least for the first time in a long time, the Commanders fans actually have hope here. Looks like that's the case. But I like this move for both franchises here. You get a look-see for Sam Howell out there on the West Coast as well.
And we saw another swap yesterday. Desmond Ridder, who was drafted in the third round of that 2022 NFL draft, the starter in Atlanta last year, traded to Arizona. In return, the Falcons will get Rondale Moore, another speedy piece on that offensive side for new quarterback Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I like where this is going for Atlanta right now. You might not love the wide receiver names you're hearing, but you got to fit it in. You have that number one in Drake London, and you add absolute speedsters in Darnell Mooney and also getting more now. Who knows what they'll do in the draft? You already have a pretty speedy and athletic tight end and also an ultra-speedy tailback here. Things are looking up in Atlanta.
Who knows who's catching the passes in Arizona for Kyler Murray, because also yesterday, Marquise Hollywood Brown signing a new deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. That's some speed for Patrick Mahomes as well. Football Friday done. Conference Championship Friday in college hoops begins. A stunner last night on quarterfinal Thursday at the Big East Tournament. Creighton, the 2 seed in the tourney, who reached the tournament final just a season ago with a generous draw in the bottom half of the bracket away from Connecticut, stunned in their opener by Providence. The Friars and Kim English now a perfect 2-4-2 this year inside Madison Square Garden. Providence wins 78-73 outright as a 7.5-point underdog. Providence now bolstering that NCAA tournament resume, maybe even on the right side of the bubble.
Yeah, I didn't see that at that point here, but here come the bid stealers, right? Providence, like, they're going to be knocked out early in that tournament. You win another game, and now you're putting yourself right on the precipice of possibly getting one of those at-large bids here as we move forward. That's a great victory. Creighton's a good ball club, plays good defense here, but also getting that slingshot effect for Providence, playing well in the Garden, rolling it over. Let's see what the Friars can do moving forward.
Another upset in the ACC tournament. Duke in its opener on quarterfinal Thursday in D.C. knocked out. One and done. NC State victorious 74-69. DRS, the Wolfpack, win outright as a double-digit dog. They got 11.5 points pregame.
Yeah, basically wire to wire. Looked like the better basketball team overall, and this is why I don't trust the ACC at all. There were 2 teams in the ACC. It's Duke and Carolina, and I've been telling you guys for weeks, Carolina's much better than Duke at this point. I don't expect a lot of rumblings, even though I am cheering on UNC to get through this weekend with a conference tournament championship to cash in a ticket. But I'll tell you guys right now, I'm not looking forward to North Carolina betting any of their futures in March Madness.
What a wild 2.5 weeks it has been for Duke, despite 28-14 from the injured man who was saved himself, Kyle Filipowski. Duke goes down in the ACC quarterfinals. NBA action quickly. The Celtics handle the Suns in the marquee game of the night behind 37 points from Jaylen Brown. And as of this moment, Garrett Cole will not require Tommy John surgery on that injured pitching elbow. Timeline to return, still a little bit up in the air. Back on the early line next.
The Bostonian versus the book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This is
the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to
Penn
find
State's
a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But
Right.
if we make them a third,
They get in.
this
is
they're
the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the book.
Kentucky on the road as a 7-8 point dog, beat Tennessee by 4. North Carolina as a 5.5 point underdog, beat Duke on the road.
I took Kentucky plus the points. I think you on there as well. I even said I wouldn't be shocked if they won it. I'm not shocked. They're just that good. It's can they be focused for 40 minutes? And they actually played, I guess you would call it somewhat defense.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Without a doubt, in every sport, all you have to do is have a bad couple of weeks, and you're being talked about in regard to being replaced. And that is in every single sport.
They never mattered in basketball before he got there. Never mattered. And he's got him in the tournament every single year. All right, he's had a bad year this year. They're 15-17.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smarte.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Around the high major level, at conference tournament week in college basketball, Thursday was an important day all around the country. For some, it was the first day that everybody was really in action. For others, it was quarterfinal Thursday. For the mid-major level, we saw some stunners like in Brooklyn inside the Barclays Center, where all four of the lower seeds in the A10 tourney won outright and pulled off some upsets. Those bid stealers are out making some noise. We start in the ACC, quarterfinal Thursday in the conference tournament in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. The stunner of the night in the evening hours, NC State, the 10 seed in the tournament, who played way back on Tuesday on the opening day of the ACC tourney. A win over Louisville, a win over Syracuse.
And now a win here, of course, here as we line up, because this is, I'll tell you what's interesting about this too. You take a look at NC State, and I've been talking about this quite a few times already, guys, and it's that slingshot effect that we talk about. You're no longer playing on your home court. You're no longer taking a look here saying, okay, if we win one game here, we're going to be able to maybe get on the bubble or be one of those last four seeds to get in the tournament. If you're NC State, you are just playing because you know you're going to have to run the table in the ACC tournament to win it. Now, if you're taking a look overall at NC State yesterday, what did you like about them? They were double-digit dogs. But I've been telling you guys for quite some time in the ACC, trying to line things up and say, this is a two-team league at this point. And that never was the case with me growing up, and specifically over the past 5, 10, or even 15 years. The ACC has always been, if not the toughest and deepest conference across the NCAA landscape. But that hasn't been the case. If you take a look at Duke yesterday, only getting to 69 points. And you see me right now wearing the Carolina blue for good reason, because I never thought Duke was even a threat here, even in the regular season. What actually happened here, Ben? You saw 2 victories here out of North Carolina over Duke. And even if they matched up here coming forward in the ACC tournament, I thought, again, the North Carolina Tar Heels would be able to handle the Duke Blue Devils. But if we're looking, Ben, overall at the game itself, you're going to live and die sometimes by the three-point line. Keep it simple. Yeah. NC State, 43% Ben from the three-point line, which is great. You take a look at Duke, 25%. Didn't get to the free throw line, and when they did, only converted 57%. That's not good enough. Even as a double-digit favorite, they got beat yesterday, and they should have.
Yeah, NC State really wire to wire in the ACC tournament quarterfinal. Again, I will say, to our Wi-Fi network. If you want to keep me off the air during Conference Championship Friday, you're going to have to work harder than that. North Carolina dominant yesterday, winning by 25, absolutely controlling the game against Florida State. They win and cover as a 10.5-point favorite. Interesting game in the final game of the day between Virginia and BC. Goes to overtime. The Cavaliers hold on 66-60 in OT, knocking BC off, ending a 4-game win streak. UVA keeping their hopes alive for an at-large berth into the NCAA tournament still there. And a big one in terms of that bubble, Pitt and Wake Forest. The Panthers went outright 81-69. Very short spread, DRS, as we broke down yesterday. Just 1.5 in favor of the Demon Deacons. Wake season probably comes to a close. Pittsburgh still sniffing a bid to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, bracketology, first 4 out right now as it sits here. It's New Mexico, Indiana State, which I know, Ben, we're cheering for to sort of get into that last 4 in. Pittsburgh and Providence here. So some bid stealers on the horizon right now. If you're fighting for Indiana State, they're hoping for some of those losses. But that was a great victory by Pittsburgh here to extend their season and continue to play on. And maybe they do have a shot here. But the stunner for me was BC. I mean, come on, I took BC getting 5 points here. I wake up 66-60 in overtime. We all know dogs go to die in overtime, which happened a few times yesterday, which was a shame. But BC, who would have known if they would have picked up that victory? Because what was I rooting for? Not necessarily just a BC cover +5 at the FanDuel Sportsbook to cash in a ticket for myself, but Virginia keeping them out, as now I see them in the last 4 in line. I'm like, oh, no, come on now, Ben. Man.
But the only thing for Virginia, DRS, because of the NC State victory, that's not going to be a quad 1 opportunity like an upset over Duke might have been. Sure, they could get into the tournament title game to take on North Carolina. UNC 7.5-point favorite against Pitt. Virginia 3.5-point favorite against NC State in the nightcap on semifinal Friday at the ACC tournament. Now we spin it around to the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City. BYU, who had a big win over UCF in its first ever Big 12 tourney game, had the exact opposite happen yesterday against Texas Tech. The Red Raiders went outright as a 3.5-point dog by 14, 81-67. Houston, the number 1 seed in this tournament, the number 1 team in the country, looked the part yesterday, 15-point win against TCU. They cover as an 11.5-point favorite. The total of 136.5 against the Horned Frogs stays well under.
Yeah, you saw some defense being played out there in the Big 12, and is it any surprise? You say to yourself, usually, all right, TCU got 45 points against Houston. Well, Houston's the best overall defense in the Big 12. Not necessarily. That title goes to Iowa State, who held Kansas State to 57 points as well. The one thing that we do know, when you're lining up March Madness, if you look at Houston and Iowa State, if they bring their B game on offense, they are so tough to beat because defense always is about intensity and defense travels. If they bring their very good defensive game, which they do quite some time, they're going to be tough outs here. Also, Baylor picking up that win over Cincinnati. But getting back to BYU, you saw the day before, BYU was awesome, Ben, from the 3-point line. Not so awesome against Texas Tech. They were down as many as 20-plus points in that game. Made a run to get it to single digits, but Texas Tech was able to hold on because BYU just couldn't make enough shots from the 3-point line here.
The Red Raiders had not covered even in their last 4 games as a dog, 0-4 ATS, an outright victory yesterday. They've won 4 in a row. What a semifinal Friday we have in KC. It's the top 4 seeds all facing off. Houston, 7.5-point favorite against Texas Tech. Just a 1.5-point spread in favor of Iowa State, who holds off K-State in a big way yesterday, 76-57. The Cyclones covering as a 7.5-point favorite. Best covered team in the Big 12. They covered in 9 of their first 11 games in conference play. Only 2 covers in their final 6 games of the regular season. Dominant yesterday against the Wildcats in a line that we saw balloon from 3.5 to 6.5 in front of our eyes. Baylor handles business against Cincinnati, 68-56. The Bears covering as a 6.5-point favorite. That's the nightcap tonight, DRS. Iowa State, Baylor, just a 1.5 spread in favor of the Clones.
Oh, it's going to be great to watch this one play out. And also, as you take a look, Iowa State, a very good defensive team here. The one thing we know about Baylor, one of the better 3-point shooting teams in the country, but also they're not a true volume 3-point shot team. They're more of, we're going to make our fair share amounts. I want to see how this plays out because also this is the times it starts to get tough now. You love teams on their home court shooting 3-point shots because they're used to it. Let's see how these numbers hold up. The same way we just talked about BYU in the Big 12 as good as you can be from the three-point line, the very next night you play a good defensive team and you're off a little bit, you're going to pay the price here. Can't wait to watch it play out tonight.
Semifinal Friday in Kansas City. Semifinal Friday in New York City at Madison Square Garden in the Big East Tournament. UConn dominant in the second half despite only having a point lead at the break against Xavier. Connecticut wins by 27, covers as a 14.5-point favorite, 87-60. Game of the day, St. John's Seton Hall. Win and you're in type of game into the big dance. And Rick Pitino is Rick Pitino for a reason. 91-72, the pace on fire for the Red Storm yesterday. They cover as a 3.5-point favorite, and it seems now, Donnie, that Rick Pitino will lead St. John's into the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2019, a proud basketball program looking for their first victory in the tournament since the year 2000.
Some on the network don't want to admit it here. You're looking at a guy that resurrects programs. Iona was down in the dumps till Pitino got there. Now you know who Iona is because they were making runs into the NCAA tournament. And now you take a look at St. John's down in the dumps here, resurrecting another New York City team here. It's fun to watch you play out. I actually thought they were a nice play yesterday at -3.5. They played well. That's their designated home court. They're supposed to play well. 91 points, awesome stuff out of St. John's as they go dancing.
DRS, myself, and Joe Frizo, our producer, were in the Garden yesterday for those first two games in the Big East tournament. It was electric. No, regular pinstripe, though. He was looking good. A couple more Big East tournament thoughts on the other side before we go around the country.
The Bostonian versus the book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State
rule. Be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the book.
Kentucky on the road as a 7-8-point dog, beat Tennessee by 4. North Carolina as a 5.5 point underdog, beat Duke on the road.
I took Kentucky plus the points. I think you on it as well. I even said I wouldn't be shocked if they won it. I'm not shocked. They're just that good. It's can they be focused for 40 minutes? And they actually played, I guess you would call it somewhat defense.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Without a doubt, in every sport, all you have to do is have a bad couple of weeks, and you're being talked about in regard to being replaced. And that is in every single sport.
They never mattered in basketball before he got there. Never mattered. And he's got him in the tournament every single year. All right, he's had a bad year this year. They're 15-17.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The world's most famous arena lived up to the billing yesterday on quarterfinal Thursday at the Big East Tournament. Connecticut dominant, as they have often been over the span of the last two seasons. Rick Pitino going dancing once again, this time with St. John's, 91-72. A huge victory for the Johnnies over Hall Ball and Seton Hall. Again, Donnie, we sat in on the press conference, both for Pitino and Shaheen Holloway, who was very raw and transparent, saying his Seton Hall club, who had 13 wins in the Big East this year, has done enough to solidify its NCAA tournament resume. According to Lenardi, Joe Lenardi of ESPN, Seton Hall still in the last four in category as of yesterday afternoon. But I do want to highlight Rick Pitino in his first year at St. John's, trying to awake a sleeping giant in the Big East. St. John's hasn't been to the big dance since 2019. St. John's hasn't won a game in the NCAA tournament since 2000. And Rick Pitino is on the brink of bringing his sixth school to an NCAA tournament. 6 different schools coached by Pitino. That would be the most ever by one single coach into the big dance. That's why you get Rick Pitino, one of the best coaches we have ever seen in the history of college hoops.
Yeah, and when St. John's is good, the Big East is better overall by a product. That New York City heartbeat that you get out of Jamaica, Queens there. That's what we wanted to see. Woo! That's why we love Pitino going back there. And eventually he's even going to have better players as he moves on, because the one thing we do know, he is a very good recruiter. Now, here's the interesting part, Ben. Now, we're going to cover this game probably a little bit later, as we should. Yeah. Getting 9.5 points today. Here's the interesting part. Are they a better basketball team than their opponent today? Absolutely not. But also, what's the mindset of St. John's? Like, you have a chance to tackle a giant today in the Garden and really enforce that we're back in a big way in the Big East. Or is it one of those, that was our playing game. We got by Seton Hall. Let's just see what happens today. And UConn houses them by 15 to 20 points. That's what I'm interested in seeing. But I got a feeling it's that momentum moving forward. Now that we're in, let's go slay the big dogs today. I'm interested to see what St. John's comes up with.
The Johnnies have won 6 straight. They have covered in 4 of 6, including outright as an underdog when Slick Rick was wearing the white suit inside Madison Square Garden against Creighton. Friday night, 5:30 p.m. inside MSG, UConn, St. John's on semifinal Friday in the Big East tournament. The first time for St. John's into semifinal Friday at the Big East tournament since 2000. Yeah. That's a billing right there. Elsewhere in the Big East, Providence, a huge upset over Creighton. And Marquette wins in overtime against Villanova, effectively ending Nova's hopes of an at-large berth into the big dance. 71-65. Marquette, even without Tyler Kolek, picks up the victory.
Getting 4.5 points in that game. Look at that final score of 71-65 here. Tough scene going to overtime. But if you were Villanova, you knew you had to win that basketball game. It wasn't so much make the tournament, because sometimes, Ben, you could just make the Big East tournament and beat a decent ball club in that first round and get bonus points for it. You weren't getting any bonus points out of beating an 0-20 DePaul right out of the gate. So you knew they had to beat Marquette to get one of those quad one victories. Weren't able to do so, and rightfully so. Villanova, questionable this season, to say the least here. I know they played in the tough conference, but they don't deserve to be in. Like, there's no fight for them. Like, hopefully on Selection Sunday they get in. No, you had to beat Marquette. You didn't do it. And also, Ben, coming down the stretch, there were 2 games that you could have won one of those games and been in the tournament. Weren't able to do that as well. You can't say that Villanova didn't have enough chances to get in. They did. They just didn't come up with any aces here.
It is a really good point. Providence, by the way, 9-3 against the number as an underdog in Big East play this year. 7 of those 9 covers an outright victory. Providence will be a 4.5-point dog against Marquette in the nightcap at Madison Square Garden. We await the official status of Tyler Kolek, the reigning Big East Player of the Year and the Golden Eagles point guard. In the Pac-12 quarterfinal Thursday out in Las Vegas, all 4 favorites win 3 of the 4 favorites win and cover. The only favorite not to cover, Oregon, they laid 3.5 against UCLA. The Bruins will miss out on the big dance. They had a shot at the end of regulation to tie it, but the story at the top, Arizona hammers USC and gets some revenge from what we saw in the regular season finale when USC won outright as a 7.5-point dog. Arizona wins by 21, covers as a 9.5-point favorite against Southern Cal.
Most people will look at the offense for Arizona. Yesterday, I was looking at the defense of Arizona, rightfully so, only 16 points up to the half for USC, as everybody's darlings maybe being able to pull off the upset, but we're reminded how talented Arizona actually is, and also maybe there was a little bit of a lull for Arizona getting pounded by USC on the final day of the Pac-12 season, because why? Arizona already had that top-line seed there. You know they heard everything. USC's coming. They're going to take them out. Paper champion out there in the Pac-12. They heard all of that noise. 70-49, they were really impressive yesterday over SC.
Wazoo, a top 25 team who will play in the big dance for the first time since 2008. Hammer Stanford, they win by 17, covering as a 7.5-point favorite. 14 wins now for the Cougs in Pac-12 play. They have covered in 13, only 6 as a favorite. Colorado needed to stack up wins down the stretch, DRS, to still be in consideration for the NCAA tournament. Make that 7 straight. They have covered in 5 of 7. 14-point win for the Buffs over Utah yesterday, 72-58. We talked about how important a victory in the Big Ten tournament to start was for Tom Izzo and Michigan State, and they rise to the occasion in the opener in Minneapolis against Minnesota. 77-67. The Spartans win and cover as a 6.5-point favorite. The best cover team in the country, the Golden Gophers, end the year at 24-8 against the spread. But I believe that win seals it for MSU. The Spartans under Tom Izzo will go dancing for a 26th straight season.
You want to get the fans, the Spartans, all fired up here, go out and do some damage today against a top seed, which I'm hoping doesn't happen because I have a Purdue ticket in my pocket here, plus 100 to win the Big Ten tournament. But that's what Michigan State does. One of those teams that was on the bubble. You take a look at bracketology. Last 4 buys, Michigan State sits on that one line here. No shame in their game if they lose to Purdue. They should be in unless we get some wild bid stealers down the stretch. I think they did enough now.
The Boilers, a 7.5-point favorite for the opener, a noon Eastern time tip on quarterfinal Friday at the Big Ten tournament. Wisconsin, who struggled in the month of February and even into early March in their final few regular season games, they hammer, and I mean hammer, Maryland yesterday, 87-56. The Badgers win and cover as a 3.5-point favorite. Only 2 schools in the last 5 Big Ten tournaments have won by 30+. Iowa in 2022. Wisconsin yesterday against the Terps. 16-4 for Wisconsin through the month of January. 3-8 since entering yesterday's opener for the Badgers in the Big Ten tourney. A big victory. Ohio State keeps it rolling. Make that 6 of 7 now under interim headman Jake Diebler. Oh, by the way, Chris Holtmann officially agreeing to be DePaul men's basketball head coach moving forward. And Indiana has won 5 straight as well. Even without Trey Galloway, the Hoosiers closed as a slight 1.5-point favorite. Anthony Leal on the putback with 7 seconds left, the winner for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, exciting basketball there being played in the Big Ten. Also, take a look at that Ohio State team. It's one of those teams that we've talked about. Fired the head coach, new look, playing great down the stretch. And also, you take a look at that bracketology. They're sitting there in the next 4 out just above Villanova. Yep. You pick up 1 or 2 more wins here, you're going to be able to go dance. And, of course, if you pick up 2 more wins, I believe that's going to get you the Big Ten championship or get you in the championship game. I don't know if that's going to happen, but nobody thought a month ago here you'd be looking at Ohio State making a run here into the NCAAs, but here they go.
The Bucks are hot, a 4.5-point dog against Illinois tonight in Minneapolis, 153.5. Over. As we go into the SEC tournament as well on Thursday. Mississippi State knocks off LSU. They were flirting with bubble contention. That should send the Bulldogs to the NCAA tournament, covering as a 4.5-point favorite. They lost 4 straight to end out the regular season. South Carolina keeps winning basketball games. 5.5-point favorite in the SEC. tournament. They cover as that 5.5-point favorite. A&M, big victory over Ole Miss. They cover as a 5.5-point favorite as well. Florida does not cover against Georgia, laying 7.5, but Donnie's Gators roll on to quarterfinal Friday in Nashville.
Yeah, quarterfinal Friday is going to be pretty fun in the SEC. You want some tempo in that game. Florida at Alabama certainly going to bring that too. It's just a matter of who's going to knock down their shots. This is such a deep conference here where technically the big guys haven't even hit the court yet, and we're getting some unbelievable performances yesterday, which does include Florida, 6th seed here in that tournament. And I told you I thought they could do some damage. We'll see if they can do it today.
DRS, you know what's so interesting? You see the number 15 next to South Carolina, 15th in the country. They went 13-5 in the SEC. They covered in 12 of 13, but only 3 as a favorite. They were so overperforming on expectation, picked to finish last. They were often booked as a dog. Elsewhere around the country, we fire through. We'll get to the Mountain West in just a second. But 4 games yesterday at the A-10 tournament, all 4 of the lower seeds won outright, including St. Bonaventure against Loyola Chicago. We saw the top seed in the tourney, Richmond, lose outright as well. And Dayton, who was ranked, they get knocked off by Duquesne. That, the bid Steelers in Brooklyn in the A-10 tourney.
Phil Martelli days, Jameer Nelson back out there. St. Joe's making a run in the A-10. Could be a lot of fun here. But by the way, I know we're not going to squeeze this in, but I told you people, watch out for those Temple Owls making a charge, back-to-back victories in their tournament as well. Philly basketball is up. Don't count Villanova. They're outside the city limits here. We're talking Philly basketball here, people. Let's make a run. Let's go.
New Mexico keeps rolling in the Mountain West. The 6th seed had the second best price, and maybe for a reason. That's Richard Pitino, Rick's son, around the association. Up next.
The Bostonian versus the book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This
is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the book.
Kentucky on the road as a 7-8-point dog, beat Tennessee by 4. North Carolina as a 5.5-point underdog, beat Duke on the road.
I took Kentucky plus the points. I think you on it as well. I even said I wouldn't be shocked if they won it. I'm not shocked. They're just that good. It's can they be focused for 40 minutes, and they actually played, I guess you would call it, somewhat defense.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Without a doubt, in every sport, all you have to do is have a bad couple of weeks, and you're being talked about in regard to being replaced. And that is in every single sport.
They never mattered in basketball before he got there. Never mattered. And he's got him in the tournament every single year. All right, he's had a bad year this year. They're 15-17.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Now we go around the association, live right here on this Friday on the early line on SportsGrid. Marquee matchup, just a 6-game slate in the NBA last night, but the best of them out in Boston. A prove-it game for Phoenix, albeit in a very difficult place to win for opposing teams this year inside TD Garden. And we saw that last night. The Celtics, the best team in the NBA, the only team that has reached the 50-win benchmark at this moment. And now they've got 52, 127, 112. A 15-point win for the C's, only laying 5.5 at close against Phoenix. They cover, and now Boston at home, 30-3 this season, booked as a favorite in all 33 of those games. Now 19-14 against the number as well.
Yeah, marquee matchup nonetheless. You had the big three out there for Phoenix. We talked about this yesterday. I was like, I'll take it. I think it was 6 points when we were talking about the game yesterday on the early line. Thought they might be able to get some points in this game, and they did, but I thought the better bet was possibly the Phoenix Suns. But if I'm going to tell you right now, Boston at home, as Ben just pointed out, is 30-3. They're going to have home court advantage all throughout the playoffs, which again would mean they don't have to win a single game on the road if they just handle their business on their home court. Sounds crazy, and yes, they're going to lose games on their home court, but you get the picture here. But also, when we equate this to college basketball, Ben, I talked about like BYU, 3-point shot. Hey, when they're in Provo, it's lights out. They're probably going to make 45% of those and at volume. The Boston Celtics shot 50 3-point shots yesterday as a team and made 25. If we look at the Celtics, this is usually the free throws that we're talking about here, but I'm talking about 3-point shots. Tatum, 4 of 8, Horford, 6 of 10, Holiday, 3 of 5, White, 3 of 9, Brown, 5 of 9, Hauser off the bench, 2 of 5. Pritchett, 1 of 1. I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't care what basketball team you are, how good a defense you play. If another team is shooting 53-point shots and making half of them, you are never going to beat that team. Maybe it's an anomaly, but my goodness, Boston bought those 3-point shots out of the rafters yesterday and crushed the Suns.
Everybody in the starting lineup, every single member of Boston's starting 5 made at least 3 threes, led by Jaylen Brown, who had 5, and he had 37 in the game to pace all scores. The big 3 out there for the Phoenix Suns, and everybody scored at least 20 points. They had 4 guys in the starting lineup score at least 20 points as well, with the addition of Grayson Allen and his 4 triples, and still not even nearly close enough for the Suns to keep it within margin and cover a 5.5-point spread. Phoenix now 7-11 against the spread this year as an underdog. Boston, who won 11 straight games surrounding the All-Star break, entering and after, then dropped 2 in a row, has now won 4 straight. They covered in the last 6 games of that 11-game win streak. They have covered in all 4 games on this new win streak. Boston has covered in their last 10 consecutive victories. The Celtics truly far and away the best team in the NBA, and I don't really particularly believe there is a close second, because at this moment, DRS, Boston has a 9.5-game lead for that top spot in the Eastern Conference. The win yesterday clinched a playoff berth for the C's. They are very close to clinching the number 1 overall seed, still with 16 games left in this NBA regular season. The team right behind them, I guess, is a figure of speech. A 9.5-game cushion for Boston is the Milwaukee Bucks, who bounced back from a 35-point shellacking in Sacramento at home last night, handling the Philadelphia 76ers. 114-105, the victory for the Bucks. They were booked as a 7-point home favorite. Now Milwaukee has won 8 of 11 since the All-Star break. They've covered in all 8 victories.
And by the way, we thought the Bucks would be an easy victor over the Sixers. You see the final score. Yep, got the win and cover, but you needed a fourth quarter to win that by 12 points just to win the basketball game. So they finally turned on the gas late at that point. But let's get back to the Eastern Conference standings, Ben, that you brought up, because some interesting points are going to start to happen. The Boston Celtics, as you pointed out, 9.5 games above the Milwaukee Bucks, which means they're basically running away with this. If we equate it to Major League Baseball, and the reason why I'm doing this is the Boston Celtics haven't won multiple championships over the past 6 to 7 years. They're still looking to get over the hump with Tatum and Brown and the guys that they currently have now. You sort of look at the Atlanta Braves, who actually did get over the hump, but sort of that past couple years, we look at the Braves running out to a really big lead in the NL East, only for the Phillies to knock them out in the first or second rounds of the playoffs. And the reason being is the Phillies had to play tough baseball down the stretch, where Atlanta sort of took that off the gas pedal. The competitive edge was down. You try to flip the switch in the playoffs, and it didn't work. So that's what I'm wondering with the Celtics here, because I think we're all in agreement. The Celtics are the best overall team in the NBA, and they're the best home team in the NBA. And if they get home court advantage, do the math, they should win it here. But I'm interested to see how the Boston Celtics treat, Ben, let's just say the final 3 weeks of the season. Because, again, the NBA playoffs are long, and can you flip the switch on? They give you 7 games in round number 1. They can probably do that. But it's still interesting where they won't be playing their best, most competitive basketball down the stretch. Why? Because they don't have to. Let's see how that plays out in the playoffs.
And Boston will have home floor advantage throughout the entirety of the NBA postseason, throughout an Eastern Conference run and even into the NBA Finals, because they have 52 wins right now, and the top 2 teams in the West, Oklahoma City and Denver, at 46. That's a 6-game difference in terms of the win column. Quickly on the game last night between the Bucks and the Sixers, Tyrese Maxey back for a second straight game. He scored 30. Giannis had 32 on the other side for Milwaukee. Again, 8 of 11 for the Bucks since the All-Star break. They have covered in all 8. Depending on when you got the total, when we talked about the game, it was 220. It closed at 219, either a push or an under, because Milwaukee has gone under in 7 of their 8 victories since the All-Star break now. Philly a dog in 13 of their last 19, 5-8, both straight up and against the spread. And to highlight your point, DRS, about where Boston is, we predicted this at the All-Star break as they approached even money. Then it got to even money about a week ago, and then we said it would not be long until the Celtics entered as an odds-on favorite into the Eastern Conference postseason to win that conference title. That's where Boston is right now, minus 120 for the C. Second best number is Milwaukee at plus 320. And if you're the Bucks, you want to stay in that 2-3 spot, and they really will, because you want to be on the opposite side of the bracket. The Knicks right now in the 4 spot, but 3 games of difference between Cleveland, who is at 3, and New York, who is at 4. You're trying to avoid Boston until a best of 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then who knows what happens. The Celtics, though, with home floor advantage, going to be very difficult to knock off in the Eastern Conference.
No, they are. And also, it just comes to the point now, we're talking in mid-March right now, right? By the time you would cash this ticket, it's months down the line. Do you want to tie up a minus 125 price? What you'd like to tie up is a 14-1, a 20-1, a 30-1 here to try to get a great return on that investment, otherwise putting that money into play each and every day as you handicap. But you can't ask me right now and say, Donnie, who do you think is going to win the East? And me not say it's the Boston Celtics. Price point, take it out of the way. They're the best team here. They should win this. Now, granted, we do see injuries come down the stretch, and I pointed out maybe an argument playing devil's advocate saying, like, well, hey, Boston might be too good right now because they're not going to play a lot of basketball down the stretch, resting their starters, and rightfully so, getting ready for the playoffs themselves. The other teams we're watching out for, like the New York Knicks at a 9-1 price. I still do think the Sixers are intriguing in a way at 21-1, not to win the NBA championship, but to win the Eastern Conference. We heard yesterday the Philadelphia 76ers going to start to get Joel Embiid on the court here to do some work in hopes that he'll be back in the first 2 weeks of April before round 1 in the playoffs. And it is good, as you pointed out. Tyrese Maxey back from that concussion, scored 30 points. The Sixers finally got over 100 points yesterday. Maybe things are looking up, but we're just taking a look at Flyers now. It's basically the Celtics that should rule the roost here in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, certainly so. Everything sets up very well for Boston. Now an interconference matchup yesterday inside the United Center in Chicago. Both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard healthy. They combined for 55 points as L.A. knocks off the Bulls 126-111. The Clippers cover as a 6-point road favorite. LA was just 5-6 entering last night since the All-Star break, only covering 3 times. A big victory for the Clippers on the road in Chicago. Total of 215 goes over. The Clippers have gone over, Donnie, in 4 of their last 5 games.
Yeah, keeping at least 2 of those 3 prominent starters in the lineup is what you needed there for the Clippers was enough. 15-point victory yesterday. You didn't have James Harden in the lineup, but when you say, I need my stars to provide, 11 of 12 from the field for Paul George for 28 points. Kawhi Leonard, 12 of 17 from the field, so very efficient, 27 points out of him. And also, Highland and Mann in the starting lineup combining for 29 points and also combining for a plus 27 on the court. That's going to help you out. That's a nice win for the Clippers, even without James Harden and their big 3. Good win over the Bulls.
The Bulls and the Hawks pretty firmly into the 9-10 game in the Eastern Conference play-in tournament. The Bulls had, though, won 4 of their last 6 entering yesterday's game at home against Los Angeles. The Oklahoma City Thunder, who were beat on their home floor by Indiana earlier this week, and then keep watching the Nuggets put up win after win. Denver has won 10 of 11 since the All-Star break. Actually entered last night's matchup against the Mavericks at home as an 11-point home favorite. No Luka Doncic on the other side for Dallas. That was why in second place, a half game behind Denver. No longer the case. OKC does not cover as an 11-point home favorite, but they do win by 7, 126-119. So now Oklahoma City 46-20, Denver 46-20 in death, taxes, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander scoring 31 points. SGA does so last night against Dallas.
Yeah, only 9 of 16 from the floor and still got that 31 points here. Only made 1 3-point shot, but it was enough to get over 30. I took a parlay yesterday, a plus 124 number. 3 or more 3-point shots made by Kyrie Irving. He had 2 of 2 right out of the gate, so you knew that one was going to be gold. And I just needed 30 points out of SGA. He gets that. Also keep in mind yesterday on the FanDuel Sportsbook, if you guys were paying attention to the boost market, I didn't take this because I made my own one. I said, I don't know if this is going to get there. It was 30 points here out of Kyrie Irving, which he got 36, and 30 points out of SGA. And he got 31. That was a plus 300 ticket that I passed over. But that was a winner late night there. Oklahoma City, we're not worried about style points right now, just picking up victories to try to get that number 1 overall seed. But Dallas gave a pretty honest effort there without Luka.
But it is interesting because OKC is still covering now in 60% of its games, but no covers in its last 2, 39, 26, and 1 against the spread. Style points is covering a margin. Oklahoma City still with Orlando, the only 2 teams at 60% in terms of the cover percentage or better in all of the NBA. Now, 19-10 against the spread as a home favorite. Snapping a 4-game win streak for the Mavs. They had covered in all 4. Make that 5 straight covers, though, for Dallas, who was a half game behind Phoenix, who's in the 7th spot. Dallas in the 8th spot. The Sacramento Kings now in the 6th spot with a half-game lead over Phoenix. New Orleans, a game in front of Sacramento. 3 games in front of the Pels for the 4th spot is the LA Clippers. And again, Oklahoma City with the win and Denver share that top seed in the Western Conference at this moment. But with how the Nuggets have played, Donnie, since the All-Star break, that number continues to shorten on the reigning Western Conference and NBA champions to win the West once again, plus 150 now for the Nugs.
Yeah, we know there's a lot of talent, I should say, across the board in the Western Conference when you take a look at roughly 2 teams in the East. But the one thing you can't get by me, we had that Fade the Public poll a couple weeks ago talking about, are we getting a preview here of the Denver Nuggets and the Boston Celtics? It's going to be hard to get me off there. Like, I really want to take a look at the Suns and maybe OKC to make a run at that. But the more you just look at the way the Denver Nuggets are built here, it just seems like we're going to get the Celtics and the Nuggets back in the NBA Finals here.
The T-Wolves only a game out of that share for the top spot, yet now 13-1 to win the Western Conference. Oh, by the way, Daniel Gafford, who had made 33 straight field goals, missed his first field goal attempt last night against OKC. We end out this opening hour next.
worry about Kentucky's maturity. I get it. Are you making a good point about it? Absolutely. They're young. They're inexperienced. They're going to make a ton of mistakes. Sometimes you can worry about their defensive tenacity. But boy, they got shot creators and they got shot makers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The betting in-game, there's a big difference, right? Like the computer changes the number so often. Like, I tried to get this in right now, but in reality, as I saw plus 165 in the arena, they're hitting the shot. And I'm getting this like a couple of seconds late. And even the sports book, like, technology can only travel so fast.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
How about this? Nikola Jokic, heavy favorite here to minus 170 price, followed by SGA at plus 250, and Luka Doncic at a 7-1 price.
It would require a whole lot from Luka to 15 of the next 20 games he has to have triple doubles, like something absurd. And it really just comes down to Jokic being amazing, doing everything he's doing. I hate to say it, but he's probably had this locked up the second Embiid was announced out.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Golf's unofficial fifth major championship got started yesterday on a Thursday. It is second round Friday at the 2024 Players Championship at TPC Sawgrass. And the guy that entered with the second best price to win the Players this year at 14-1, his name, Rory McIlroy, got off to a blazing start on Thursday. He birdied his first 3 holes. He shares a 3-way tie at the top following his opening round. 7 under par for McIlroy, 7 under for Xander Schauffele, 7 under for Wyndham Clark as well. And it was a dramatic day, number one. Rory McIlroy hit 2 of his tee balls into the water on 7 and 18 yesterday. And his 2 playing partners, Jordan Spieth and Victor Hovland, thought he took a couple of favorable drops. It led to a screaming match on the course between Jordan Spieth and Rory McIlroy. Some bad blood between that pair.
How about that? You're talking about some bad blood in this tournament here. No bad blood on the 17th as they gripped a hole-in-one yesterday early to cash in an odds boost here at the FanDuel Sportsbook. So that was great. But also, what is there, 12 golfers or so at 5 and under already here in this tournament? Impressive stuff. They're already underway, by the way. I see Scotty Scheffler a -1 already through 1 hole. So away we go here. Looks like a great TPC championship heading up for us.
Scotty 5 under in his opening round, birdied his first hole in this second round on Friday. He's got still that favored number at plus 240. Now only 60 cents, or $1.60 rather, in front of Rory McIlroy at 4-1. Xander Schauffele plus 650. Wyndham Clark at 12-1. Shout out to our guy, Donnie's guy, Keith Stewart, who said in Ponte Vedra Beach this week that there would not be nearly as much wins as in years past, would make for ripe scoring conditions. And shout out to Ryan Fox as well with that profit boost on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Would there be an ace on 17, the Island Green? He did that in the opening hour of play yesterday, jarring it. cashing a big ticket for all around the National Football League when Hour 2 of this Friday starts in 55 seconds.